And we are live. Hey guys, welcome back to the Adler podcast. Today is episode number 52. Unfortunately, today is going to be a bit of a lonely podcast for myself because both Joe and Franco are stuck with work and they unfortunately will not be able to join me for the podcast. So today we've still got loads, and I mean loads to talk about. I've got a bunch of series to update you on. We've got trailers as always. We've got the trailers for If, John Krasinski's If. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about Kung Fu Panda 4. We got the trailer for that. We've got the trailer for The Kitchen, which is Daniel Kaluuya's directorial debut. It looks very interesting. We've also got Civil War, directed by Alex Garland, which we'll be looking at today as well. That's it with regard to the trailers. We've got a bit of news as well. First of all, we're going to look at 2024 and what are the forecasts for the box office coming up next year. Obviously, we all know that there was the actors' strike and the writers' strike. And how is that going to impact the box office going in next year? Then we've got news on a Hideo Kojima movie with A24. It's going to be apparently a Death Stranding movie. Fortunately, I haven't played that game. I was hoping Joe would be able to give a bit more information on that. Then, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, one of the movies I've been most excited to watch, coming out on Friday. Unfortunately, at least according to the critics, it's not very good. We'll be looking at the reviews on Rebel Moon. And finally, breaking news. Well, not really breaking news because it was breaking news yesterday, so I guess it's one day late. But obviously, we've got the news about Jonathan Majors. Apparently, he's guilty. We'll talk about that later on. And obviously, we'll look at all what that means for Marvel, what that means for the future of the MCU, and so much more. Then we've got reviews. I've got reviews for you today. We've got the review for The Teacher's Lounge. I've got the review for Priscilla for you. And I've also got the review for Godzilla Minus One. Excited to talk about that movie. What a great experience at the cinema yesterday. That's all we've got to talk about today. So, loads on the agenda. Join me. Let me know all your thoughts about all these different topics in the comment section below. Keep me company. Let me know your thoughts on all we have to talk about. And with that, we can move on to the sponsored section of the show because this podcast is sponsored by Embassy. Thank you, Embassy, for sponsoring this show. And here we can have a quick look at what we can watch in Embassy this week. Obviously, we've got quite a few movies showing at Embassy Cinemas. We've got Wonka, we've got Journey to Bethlehem, we've got Napoleon, Wish, the new Hunger Games movie, The Marvels, and so much more. I'm also excited to look at the coming soon because there's lots of movies here I'm excited to watch in the coming weeks. First of all, obviously, we're going to be watching Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. That comes out on Thursday. We'll look at the tickets a little later on. We've got Ferrari. We've got obviously Priscilla. We've got Anyone But You, which is starring Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. That's a very interesting casting decision there. I'm very interested to see that movie. And the one I'm most excited to talk about is Poor Things, a movie that I've been so excited to watch. I'm a big fan of Yorgos Lanthimos, big fan of Emma Stone and all she's been doing. Great cast as well. Apart from Emma Stone, we've got Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo, and so many others. Mean Girls, if you're looking for the remake of Mean Girls, apparently it's a musical. For some reason, they're trying to hide the fact that it's a musical, but yes, Mean Girls is going to be showing at NBC Cinemas, and it's a musical, so that'll be one interesting to watch, definitely. And The Color Purple, which I believe is also a remake of the classic. And that apparently, again, this is hidden, at least if you watch the trailer, that is apparently also a musical. So that's another movie I'm excited to watch, The Color Purple. Now let's have a quick look at the tickets for this week. So again, if you want to watch Wonka, I watched Wonka. I had a very good time watching it. That is also a musical, and that was also hidden. Apparently, studios today are scared to show that the movies they are showing are musicals, but I don't know. I don't get why they're so scared to show that they're musicals. So there's Wonka. We've got Journey to Bethlehem. If you're looking for a Christmas movie, we've got Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom coming out, like I said, on Thursday, 21st December. I'm quite excited for that, to be honest. Even though it's the end of the DC universe, I'm hoping it's going to end with a bang. Obviously, we've got Jason Momoa, Yahya Abdul Mateen, great actors. Hopefully, they can pull it off and give us some decent visuals there as well. Ferrari, which is one I'm very excited for, that comes out on Tuesday, 26th December. And that should be definitely an interesting watch. I'm a big, big Michael Mann fan. Heat, Last of the Mohicans, amongst many, many, many other classics. So that's another great watch. Napoleon. Obviously, if you haven't watched Napoleon, make sure you do go watch Napoleon. Obviously, if you're going in for the historical accuracy, it's a Ridley Scott movie. So, I mean, you know what you're getting there. But if you are looking for some decent battle sequences and good performances from Joaquin Phoenix and Emily, and obviously Vanessa Kirby, mixed her up with Emily Blunt, Vanessa Kirby, that's another good movie you can watch at NBC Cinemas. And to conclude, obviously we've got Wish, animated Disney animated movie. If you're looking to take your family to go watch a movie, this is definitely an interesting one. And make sure you go and watch Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We have reviewed it a few weeks ago now. Had a very good time watching it. Some very good songs. Rachel Ziegler with some great singing. Tom Blythe with a great performance. Overall, it's a very, very good, very watchable movie. I had a good time watching it. So if you are a fan of the Hunger Games movies, don't miss out on watching it in the cinemas. It's well worth the time. And last couple of days for the Marvels, if you haven't watched it and you're interested in the MCU, you can definitely do much worse than the Marvels. So thank you to Embassy for sponsoring this podcast. And with that, I'm going to move on to what I have been up to this week. And this week, I've been watching quite a lot of stuff. And to start off, I've been watching quite a few series. And the first series I would like to talk about is the following. We've got The Curse. The Curse, which is definitely has been an interesting series I've been watching recently. I'm going to be honest with you. I know a lot of people maybe aren't the biggest of fans of this show, but I'm loving it. Honestly, I am loving it. I think the humor really works really well for me. It's an awkward series, but honestly, if you haven't started watching The Curse, please do. Great cast: Emma Stone, Nathan Fielder, Benny Safdie. Please watch it. Give it a go at least. Last episode was episode 6. I thought episode 5 was actually one of the best episodes I've watched this year. I thought the humor really worked in episode 5, and I thought that Whitney, who is obviously Emma Stone, had a bloody great moment at the end of this episode. She builds all these preconceptions on people, right? Where she thinks, she hears that, listen, this guy is in favor of the police. He gives donations to the police, so obviously he must be this crazy white nationalist, right? This crazy Republican conservative. And when Whitney and Asher meet him, obviously they're surprised. They're like, wait, this guy seems quite nice. Not only does he give money to the police, but he also gives money to UNICEF. He gives money to a bunch of good organizations. So it's a great means of tackling these preconceptions we build about people. And I thought episode 5 of The Curse was very good. Episode 6 was decent as well. Episode 6 was a decent episode, but it just kind of kept the plot flowing a bit more. It's quite short as well, 38 minutes. So well worth a watch. I highly recommend checking out The Curse. Moving on to another episode, which is basically the season finale of A Murder at the End of the World. I just finished it now on my PC before the podcast started. And no spoilers, but I had no idea how this how this kind of like murder kind of like series was going to work out. The who done it element was done really well. I thought visually it was great. Overall, a great watch. I highly recommend also checking out A Murder at the End of the World. Yu Yu Hakusho, which is obviously a live action series of the anime. I have not watched the anime, so fans of anime, forgive me. I'm not the biggest anime fan. I've watched a bit here and there, but obviously I haven't watched Yu Yu Hakusho. However, I am excited, by the way, to talk about this. I'm just going to mention it now. One Piece apparently is going to be remade. Apparently, they're going to remake One Piece, and it's going to be coming out on Netflix. So that's an interesting piece of news, and I'm excited to start One Piece. Obviously, we've got the live action One Piece, which was great. I loved watching it on Netflix, but they're going to be remaking the anime, and yeah, excited to watch that as well. Yu Yu Hakusho, watched the first two episodes, didn't have time to continue. I think they're doing a good job so far. I think introducing the characters, they did a really, really good job. I thought the episode one was a really well done episode. So let me find the episode really quickly. I thought episode one was a very, very well done episode. I think the way they introduce our main character, Yusuke, I believe. I'm not very good with names. Yeah, Yusuke is done really well. At first, he's not that likable, but then we start to see hints that maybe he's not this big asshole all the time, right? Because obviously his character is an asshole. That's the whole point of his character. But he does a good thing, and that turns him um, basically into this like spirit detective. I'm not really too into the lore so far, but I think they've done a good job in introducing the character, making us care for making us care for him, and an overall good job visually as well. I thought the CGI was a little wonky at times, but overall, I think they do a really good job in introducing the world. Should you watch it? I think if you're a fan of the anime, I think you should definitely watch it. I'll be giving you my review for the whole 5 episodes next week, and that is Yu Yu Hakusho. Moving on to The Crown. I've been watching The Crown. The Crown has so far been a great watch. I'm really, really enjoying season 6. There are some tidbits here and there I have with it. Obviously, I reviewed part one of season 6 a few weeks ago. I think that was last episode before November, the end of November. But today I'm just going to go really quickly through season 6, part two, which obviously started off with episode 5, Will's Mania. Obviously, season 6, part two focuses much more, obviously, on William, who, as you can see in the summary over there, he's being hounded by the press. Obviously, lots of people are crazy about him. They can kind of see Diana in him. Obviously, he's a very good-looking kid, and we see William trying to kind of like maneuver his way through all these difficulties. I think, honestly, with most, if not all, the casting, I think they did a fantastic, bloody fantastic job. I thought that especially we see that with William, the casting of William. We see that with the casting of especially Queen Elizabeth. I think Imelda Staunton had a fantastic season 6. I thought she wasn't as strong in season 5. I wasn't too convinced by her performance, and obviously she's a fantastic actress. I wasn't too convinced by her performance in season 5, but in season 6, I have to admit, I really, really, really enjoyed Imelda Staunton's performance. So that is The Crown. More or less, I will admit that my favorite episodes of season 6 were definitely the Margaret episode, episode 8, as you can basically the two you can see top rated here, right? We've got episode 8 and episode 10. Episode 8, like I said, focuses on the character of Margaret a lot. Obviously, Margaret. I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler that eventually she will die. Obviously, in this season, it gives a bit more kind of like development to the Queen, obviously herself as well. But as always, the Margaret episode is generally the highlight of a season from The Crown. That's episode 8, and then episode 10, which I think is a fantastic sending off for this season. I think a very respectful way of ending this series, with the Queen kind of reflecting about her future, but also kind of like what's next, right? Is she going to go ahead and kind of like rescind and give rule to Charles, or is she going to continue? She's going to be 80 now. She's feeling a little old, and obviously we've got all those elements done really well. But the final few minutes of this episode are top class. Really, really great television. So if you have not watched season 6 of The Crown, please do yourself a favor and go and watch it after this podcast because it is a great, great watch. And that is The Crown. Would I recommend The Crown? Definitely, guys, go and watch The Crown. It's a great, great, great series. So that is all the series I have watched this week. Now let's move on to movies. Obviously, I've got a few movies I'm going to be reviewing this week. I watched The Teacher's Lounge, I watched Priscilla, and I watched Godzilla Minus One. More on that later on. And obviously, also, I've got one other movie that I watched this week. I watched it with my girlfriend, and that is No Hard Feelings, the Jennifer Lawrence comedy, romantic comedy. Well, I'd say more of a pure comedy, to be honest. Um, um, what did I think about it? I think it's a very good watch, a very watchable movie. I had a good laugh. I think I gave it like a three or a three. I think it's a three on Letterboxd. Um, it's fun. It's funny. It's a good watch. It's I believe it should have been on Netflix, or at least it's not on Netflix in Malta. But in England and in the US, I know that it is on Netflix. So if you're from those whereabouts, you can definitely you've probably already watched No Hard Feelings. Well, I don't know why I missed out on watching this when this came out. I think it's definitely a watchable movie. Highly recommend checking it out if you not have done so. I think Jennifer Lawrence gives a very good performance. I was somewhat surprised though that Jennifer Lawrence was given a nomination for Best Actress in a Comedy in the Golden Globes. I do feel there is a bit of star power playing its part there, but I think again definitely watchable. Also, I wanted to mention a very good performance by Andrew Bart Feldman. I don't know if I've seen him in anything before. I feel like I haven't watched him in anything before. In fact, I haven't. But I think this is a fantastic performance across Jennifer Lawrence. Obviously, they play off each other really well. There's great chemistry there. I think they do a very, very good job. Very funny as well. And I was surprised. There was one particular scene with Jennifer Lawrence. We actually talked about this scene quite a while ago on this podcast with Franco and Joe, which I won't spoil, obviously, because go in and watch it. But I was surprised how brave both the creator, who's the director for this? We've got Gene Stupnitsky directing this, and James Stupnitsky and John Phillips writing it, and also Jennifer Lawrence. I think props to Jennifer Lawrence for going all in this particular scene I'm talking about. If you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Trust me. So that is No Hard Feelings. So that's pretty much all I've watched this week. People in the chat, let me know what you've been up to. What have you watched? What movies have you watched? What series have you watched? And what should I watch? What movies do you think should I watch in the coming weeks? I've got the holidays coming up in a few days, so that's good time to catch up on all the stuff I've been missing out on. And obviously, any series I'm missing out on, please let me know in the comment section below. And with that, let's move on to the trailers. Just going to take a quick break to here, guys, because obviously today I am on my own and I do not have a second's break. So I'm just going to take a sip of water and we'll move on. So, moving on to the trailers, and the first trailer we have for you today is If, directed by John Krasinski. So, let's have a look at If. Ryan Reynolds' imagination gets supersized in first trailer for John Krasinski's If. The live action fantasy hits theaters in May 2024. So, what is If all about? John Krasinski's latest venture, If, is another small step closer to release. Following the first look at the fantasy movie's poster yesterday, Paramount Pictures has released the first trailer for the film. It teases an exciting fantasy adventure audiences can look forward to immersing themselves in this summer. If is currently set to release in theaters on May 14, 2024. Written, directed, and starring Krasinski, If primarily centers on a young girl who can see imaginary friends. However, it's not just hers she has the power to see, it's every imaginary friend forgotten by their respective humans. The many children they've helped. Saddened by being alone and facing the threat of being abandoned forever, the imaginary friends team up with the girl who may be their only hope for being remembered before time runs out. Uh, Along with Krasinski, If boasts a star-studded cast across human and imaginary friend roles. On the human side, the film stars Ryan Reynolds, Kaylee Fleming, and Fiona Shaw. The imaginary friends are voiced by the likes of Krasinski's former The Office co-star Steve Carell. Looking forward to that reunion, Steve Carell and Krasinski. His Quiet Place co-star and spouse Emily Blunt, mentioned Emily Blunt a while ago. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Matt Damon, Maya Rudolph, Vince Vaughn, Sam Rockwell, Sebastian Maniscalco, Christopher Maloney, Richard Jenkins, and Aquafina. That is one bloody great cast. Obviously, all voice actors there, but great voice actors nonetheless. If is produced by Krasinski, Reynolds, Alison Seeger, and Andrew Form. So, my thoughts on Krasinski's If. Let's have a quick look at some of the images from the movie. And here we go. So let's have a quick look at some of the images from the movie. So, first of all, last few movies I've watched by Krasinski were obviously the Quiet Place movies. Great horror, great thriller horror movies with some fantastic tension developed. Clearly, this is a very different direction by Krasinski. More family oriented. Obviously, we've got young actress Kaylee Fleming appearing in this, and that is obviously the actress. Here she is. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you might recognize her. Yes, that's Judith Grimes. And honestly, watching the whole trailer with obviously John Krasinski's If, I thought that she really seems to pull it off. I mean, she's playing off Ryan Reynolds really well, at least in the trailer. So overall, I'm really excited to watch this. One small thing I'm a little worried about this movie, and one small thing I wanted to mention when discussing this movie. I really do hope that whilst it is true, it is a family movie, so it's going to be always consistently family appropriate. I'm slightly worried this movie might be a tad too silly for my liking. I hope that Krasinski approaches it in still a quite a mature way. Kids today, they're able to tackle and able to look at mature themes and still not be, frightened or scared or anything. I mean, I'm a teacher, so trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Give kids and give family movies mature themes, and everyone will love it. This is the classic Pixar approach. Visuals that are going to attract kids, that the kids are going to want to watch again and again and again. But deep down, behind the beautiful animation and the beautiful visuals, you need to give the whole family, solid themes to chew on, mature, solid themes. So I hope that Krasinski does that. He's a talented director. I love the Quiet Place movies. So I'm confident that he's going to do a great job with this as well. I'm not worried at all. But that's just the one little thing that was on my mind that I wanted to mention about If. Moving on from If to Kung Fu Panda 4, the trailer for that. I had a look at the trailer. To be honest with you, I've watched the first Kung Fu Panda, haven't watched the rest. I'm probably try and watch them these Christmas holidays. I'm sure Tristian would like to watch them as well with me. I'm sure she'll be looking forward to that. So honestly, I don't have too much to say about the Kung Fu Panda trailer. From what I saw, I mean, the only one I watched was the one that came out 15 years ago, which I mean, I can't believe Kung Fu Panda came out 15 years ago. Like, where have those years gone? From what I remember watching Kung Fu Panda, it was first of all beautiful animation, very beautiful animation, and we can see that here as well. I think I'm not sharing the screen. My apologies. There we go. So that's Kung Fu Panda 4. We can see the animation for Kung Fu Panda 4. I mean, again, beautiful animation, and the action sequences were generally quite creative. You could see that as well in the trailer. I also remember thinking the lore was very interesting, and I think the lore is developed more in the following movies, which I will definitely want to check out very soon. So that is quick thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4. Let me know in the comment section below, guys. Have you watched the Kung Fu Panda trilogy? which is now going to become 4 movies. Apparently, the approach they're going to take with Kung Fu Panda is they've made a trilogy and now they're going to make another trilogy, right? So it'll be 4 to 6, probably trying to go the the Star Wars way. Hopefully, they're more successful with that. Next up, which is a trailer I'm excited to talk about because this I'm always looking for original movies, and Netflix is apparently giving us one of those. A very good looking sci-fi, kind of like slightly post-apocalyptic, slightly dystopian in its elements, because Daniel Kaluuya is going on his directorial debut, and we have the trailer for The Kitchen. The sprawling hellscape of a dystopian London sets the scene for what will be an action-packed story of survival and chosen family bonds, when a previously absent father is put to the test to do everything in his power to keep a young man alive. Starring rapper turned actor Kane Robinson and up-and-comer Jediah Bannerman, the film was co-directed by Kibwe Tavares. The world has fallen into complete chaos in the trailer for The Kitchen as the system has crumbled, plummeting millions into difficult financial times. Right from the start, viewers will see how many are handling their monetary problems through heists and petty thefts. In a very Robin Hood-like manner, most of these criminals are taking the goods they lifted from trucks and other carriers and redistributing them among the people who need them the most, those living in the last social homing system that remains a place known as the kitchen. Robinson's Izzy, an ex-con freshly out of prison, wants nothing more than to escape the confines of the kitchen and make a new home for himself and a young boy who we later find out to be his son, Benji. Teaching Benji how to survive life in the kitchen is no small task, as police raids and violence from within are a daily occurrence. Still, the pair of estranged family members attempt to repair the bond and make up for the years that they missed together while keeping each other alive. While it isn't teased in the trailer, previously released information revealed that Izzy will be forced to make a life-altering decision that would see him returning to a life of crime to keep him and Benji afloat. The Kitchen will apparently be served up on Netflix in the US on January 19, 2024. So, The Kitchen, let's have a look at the trailer. We've got some images here from the trailer of The Kitchen. Here we've got the cast of actors who are going to be showing up in The Kitchen, and here we've got the trailer. So let's have a look at that. First of all, some thoughts. I mean, we've got it here, right? The setting. The setting looks very interesting. I think The Kitchen looks like a very interesting place, very gritty, well realized visually. And the world itself looks, like I said, gritty, realistic, real, lived in. It looks like the kind of place we can see in a few years' time, honestly. So I think they do a very good job with the visuals here. So that's an interesting element here. You know, I mean, if you just look at the scene, I think the visuals and the CGI looks pretty well done. I think it's all done pretty well. Moving on, we also have to mention later on, we see clips of some of the action sequences. I think the action seems to be really well shot. I think the action comes a little later on. Lots of world building, as you can see in this trailer. You see a lot of world building. You can see where it's taking place. Beautiful, beautiful shots here. I think the cinematography in this looks really great as well. Let's go, Kano. Kano, who are you referring to? Ed. Let's go, Kano. So, where was I? Oh, so as you can tell, the visuals in this are great. I think the CGI, even the background there, looks very good, very well done. I think visually they do a very good job in this trailer to set up the whole the location, what it's about, the teams it's going to tackle. Clearly, it's going to tackle teams on race and class and so on, and obviously the very near future. I think overall, also very exciting is the fact that on Rotten Tomatoes, reactions have so far been mostly positive. Apparently, it's at 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, with like 16, 18 reviews, something like that. So I'm excited to watch this. This comes out on Netflix on January 19th, 2024. It looks like a very, very interesting watch. And with that, from one post apocalyptic world to another, we're moving to the one I've been most excited to talk about, which is Civil War. This is an A24 movie, and as I always say, is he Zach Tarkano? He's a British rapper, performed the role in Top Boy as well. Ah, all right. Yeah, I knew he was a British rapper. Had no. All right. Okay. I think he looks great in the kitchen. I think he really looks great in the kitchen. That comes out on Netflix, so will definitely be an interesting watch. Moving on to the trailer I've been most looking forward to talk about, which is a trailer for Civil War, directed by one of my personal favorite directors, Alex Garland, who has some fantastic stuff. He's got Ex Machina, for example, which is one of my personal favorite sci-fi movies. But some other great stuff as well. I think that was last year. Men, he had Men, which I thought was very good. Lots of hate for Men, however, for I think very obvious reasons. Looking at the title of that movie. But let's talk about Civil War now. The lines are being drawn in the sand in the first trailer for Alex Garland's latest sci-fi action flick. Civil War. Reteaming with A24, Garland's pulse pounding production will bring audiences just as much dystopian drama as that of his previous projects. Titles like Annihilation, I still have to watch. I need to watch that. But Ex Machina, I thought, was one of the most beautifully shot movies of the past few years and really tackles the topic of kind of like of AI beautifully. I think that was a beautifully shot, beautifully made movie. Known the world over as expert level examples of filmmaking, fans have been patiently waiting since 2020's Men to see what Garland had up his sleeves next. Today's trailer fills in plenty of the gaps and introduces us to Nick Offerman as a very Coriolanus Snow like president, getting the getting the Hunger Games references there on Collider. Let's have a quick look at Civil War. I think, again, the trailer I'm a little iffy on. I'll talk about why I'm a little iffy on about that in a bit. But what do we see in the trailer? First of all, we see Kirsten Dunst, who is a photojournalist on a mission as she bridges the gap between two sides of the war, the American government and a group known as the Western Forces. Traveling with Kirsten Dunst, we've got Narcos' Wagner Moura, who obviously, if you've watched Narcos, you'll know exactly who we're talking about there. Stephen McKinley Henderson, who we can see in Dune, and Kaylee Speeney, who I will be talking about later on in my review for Priscilla. So obviously we've got that dynamic. Then obviously we've got the whole right. Got this whole dystopian element where we see them traveling through the American landscape, and apparently the whole point of this journey is to get to the White House. Apparently, on their way to the White House, all hell breaks loose because we see the Western forces. Apparently, the Western forces. We've got Texas and uh, California, who break off from the rest of the US, and those forces from Texas and from California are attempting to attack the White House. The concept is fascinating. I mean, the concept here is really, really, really interesting. Now, obviously, there's been lots of controversy about this. First of all, I really wanted to mention the fact that, like I've said already, Garland does some fantastic job. I think the writing in most of his movies is great. Men, I loved. Ex Machina, I loved. Ex Machina was actually his directorial debut. And I have to say that that was one of the most confident directorial debuts I have ever watched in my life. He knows what he's doing when he's tackling those dystopian like vibes, right? I mean, going through this trailer a bit more, you can clearly see there's going to be lots of pulse pounding action in this. Apparently, A24 want to go that direction, but also obviously very strong dystopian vibes here. And like I always say about Alex Garland, this guy knows how to do visuals. And I think even looking at this movie, I think he tackles the visuals really well. One thing I was a little bit iffy about was this part of the trailer, this explosion. I think the CGI has not been completely rendered in this scene. You can see it maybe um, like the dust there from the explosion doesn't look completely convincing. But apart from this little nitpicking, I think overall visually, this looks like it's going to be a great, great, great movie. Moving on, Texas, I wanted to mention this as well. Something I found a little iffy about this trailer. Texas and California united. Like, we're literally talking about the complete opposite states. Texas are obviously, we've got the more conservative, supporting the Republicans, and California, obviously, much more liberal, supporting the Democrats. So the fact that they're united together sounds a little iffy, quite unlikely. I hope the movie does a good job in explaining how they got united together and why did they break off from the rest of the US. Now, obviously, we have to talk about the budget. Apparently, this is the most expensive A24 movie ever made at $75 million, which, like I mentioned before, we've been seeing A24 looking to push towards more franchisable, more kind of like bigger projects, right? Looking to produce more action, bigger budget action projects. And hopefully, one would hope at least that despite the bigger budgets and despite their movies taking maybe a slightly different direction from the more horror, more political, social analysis kind of like movies, moving more towards more action, they can still keep those strong, powerful themes that we know we always see in A24 movies, those fascinating visuals, strong teams, great writing, and shift that towards bigger budget projects. Hopefully, that transition works really well. I mean, if you're giving that kind of transition to anyone, give it to Alex Garland. Um, and finally, we have to talk about the cast. Obviously, like we saw at the beginning of this trailer, we've got our man Pablo Escobar there, Wagner Moura, who you've definitely seen in Narcos. We've got Kirsten Dunst, who is obviously a bloody fantastic actress, and we could see him a bit before there. We've got obviously Jesse Plemons. Jesse Plemons, who is currently, I think, one of my personal favorite actors. Jesse Plemons is the kind of guy who you'll see in the cast, right? And you'll be like, okay, great, there's Jesse Plemons. And you don't see Jesse Plemons for half the movie, three quarters of the movie. And then he pops up for 5, 10 minutes. And he's basically the best thing about that whole movie. I think Jesse Plemons does a great job consistently in this movie. He does, again, seem to be taking the approach of kind of like looking like this friendly guy, but then obviously he's got his gun and he's going to be probably, he's super menacing as an actor as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Jesse Plemons. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Civil War. I know there's been some obviously some criticism about it. Maybe it looks a bit too liberal at times. I'm going to give Alex Garland, I trust Alex Garland. I think he's a great director and a great writer. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this. Civil War will be released into cinemas and IMAX on April 26, 2024. So that will be an exciting movie. It'll be interesting to see if that releases in Malta. Doubt it will, but maybe since it's Alex Garland, maybe they do, and it's got a decent cost as well. That might attract a few people. It'll be interesting to see if it releases in Malta. Hopefully it does, because I'm very excited to watch this. Yeah, so that's pretty much all we had to talk about with regard to trailers. So, viewers, listeners, let me know in the comment section below your thoughts about all those trailers we've talked about. We've talked about Civil War, we've talked about The Kitchen, we've talked about Kung Fu Panda 4. Well, not really, I just mentioned it because I didn't have much to say about that. And we've talked about John Krasinski's If. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on all those trailers. And with that, guys, give me 2 minutes, well, 1 minute. Just going to take a quick break and rest my voice for a little bit. See you in a bit. All right. Thank you for waiting, guys. Let's move on now. We've got the news of the week. We've got one, two, three, four news pieces to talk about. So let's start off with the first one. And the first bit of news I wanted to talk about today, this was a very interesting article by the Hollywood Reporter, which is talking about kind of like what direction is going to be taken with regard to the box office, because obviously 2024 has been quite the tumultuous ride at the box office after a slew of high profile tentpoles were pushed to 2025 because of the lengthy writers and actors strike. Um, so, like I mentioned before, the writers and the actors strike has been obviously, first of all, we have to say that is to be blamed completely on the big studios. I mean, if you are making millions, if not billions, in profits, I think actors and writers should be paid their due, their fair due. So they were right to strike. That's clear. But for the industry itself, obviously, definitely we can say that those strikes will not help, right? Uh, and it's safe to say, I think, that it was a major blow to the post pandemic recovery effort, as domestic box office revenue in 2024 is now expected to come in behind that of 2023, a reversal of fortunes no one predicted. If projections are right, domestic box office in 2024 could top out at $7.5 billion to $8 billion compared to an expected 8.8 to 8.9 billion dollars this year, say multiple studio executives who spoke with the Hollywood Reporter. The culprit. So, obviously, the culprit is a sparse release calendar, particularly during the first 3 months of the year. One studio exec said that regarding the first part of the year, he called it a complete disaster. All told, the global box office could lose out on $2 billion or more because of the 2024 movies that were bumped to 2025, including the next Tom Cruise Mission Impossible installment, Marvel's Anthony Mackie led Captain America, Brave New World, Disney's Snow White live action reimagining starring Rachel Ziegler, and Sony's next Spider Verse film. Other films that fled for 2025 when the strikes commenced include Blade, Elio, Thunderbolts, and Dirty Dancing. So, what does this mean? What does this mean for studios? It means 2024, at least the first half of 2024, is going to be an absolute disaster. Um, I mean, they deserve it, right? I'm sorry. I mean, I'm going to be harsh here, but if the studios are not paying the actors and the writers their fair due, they deserve the complete disaster that they are now facing. I mean, punto basta. That's pretty much all there is to say about this. Now, obviously, does the, I mean, what? Now, let's be fair. What direction could the studios do to save a bit of face here? Increase marketing for smaller movies. So, A24, I think, are doing a very good job with that, releasing a movie like Civil War. Like it or hate it, maybe you disagree with the political approach taken by that movie, but that is a fresh, original new movie. Studios need to push the smaller projects that they have in their studios, push those movies to March, push those movies to April, May. If those months are very quiet, push those smaller projects to the earlier months. Push a lot of marketing for them. Make sure that you're pushing for your big star, because even the smaller movies, again, we're looking at something like Civil War, which is a more of a medium-sized budget. Well, not definitely not a small budget with 75 million, but not a 300 million budget movie, right? Push your big stars, show your big stars off, push lots of marketing, and try to make a profit of at least these medium and small sized budget movies. Push for those movies. Not every movie has to be MCU, not every movie has to be franchisable. Push these smaller movies, please. People are looking for more interesting, different, original takes. Oppenheimer and Barbie should show you that. People want more original stuff. End of my rant. Moving on to the next bit of news. This is very, very interesting news. If you are a fan of Hideo Kojima, and I imagine if you are a fan of Hideo Kojima, you are a fan of Death Stranding, rejoice, because apparently the 2019 video game, which starred Norman Reedus, Mads Mikkelsen, and Lea Seydoux, is currently being produced by A24 into a movie. The best-selling, artistically challenging video game Death Stranding is headed to the big screen with the help of its author-creator Hideo Kojima. In the studio, A24 is developing a feature based on the 2019 video game, which was hailed as one of the most cinematic games of all time. It's also notable as an example of A-list actors embracing the genre, with Norman Reedus starring as Sam Porter, a man navigating a world torn apart by a cataclysm. Other stars included Mads Mikkelsen, Lea Seydoux, Guillermo del Toro, and Margaret Qualley. No castings or other creative news is known about the film version. According to A24, the film promises to delve into the mystery surrounding the apocalyptic event called the Death Stranding, which blurred the lines between life and death and brought forth nightmarish creatures into a world on the brink of collapse. Kojima is obviously one of the gaming industry's most celebrated creators, with his work known for pushing boundaries of the medium. After decades at Konami, which included work on Metal Gear, he split with the gaming studio in 2015, with his Kojima Productions becoming an independent entity. So, my thoughts on Death Stranding being turned into a movie. First of all, I have to mention that I think, like I've mentioned many times, I think A24 are always at the forefront of creativity, choosing interesting, fascinating, different projects when it comes to movies. And I think they have done a great job in working with Hideo Kojima on the upcoming Death Stranding movie. I think that is perfect. A perfect choice to go with A24 for Hideo Kojima. With regard to the video game itself, I have not played Death Stranding, so I can't really comment about what the whole video game is about. What I can say is that I watched quite a lot of gameplay from it. And if I have to be honest, it didn't look interesting. It didn't interest me. I do have to give it a go. Maybe these holidays, I'll give it a go. I'll try. I don't know if it's released on PC. I believe it did release on PC. It did, yes. There's the Death Stranding Director's Cut on Steam, which has a 9 out of 10 rating on Steam. So a very, very, very positive rating there. Looking at a few of the reviews. In a world where everything kills you, we offer you a job as a courier. Well, okay. Tuck that shit out. Don't tell nobody what you're going through. They didn't really. You're a good man, Arthur Morgan. I'll cut to the chase. If you want a game with great charm and personality, this is the one for you. It's great. The sound effects and music fit the atmosphere of the game. Yeah, so those are some of the comments I can read about the video game Death Stranding. I'm going to be honest. Again, the gameplay didn't look like the most riveting, the most exciting. Mostly it seemed like a delivery simulator. But from most of the reviews, most people seem to really, really, really enjoy Death Stranding. So let me know in the comment section below. Anyone who has watched played Death Stranding, let me know in the comment section below. Do you think that can be transformed into a movie effectively? And do you think A24 are the right production team to work on that? I definitely do. Let me know in the comment section below. And with that, guys, let's move on to the next news piece. Oh, I'm so sad talking about the next news piece because I've been really excited about this one, guys. I've been really, really excited about this movie. I am a Zack Snyder stan. I love most of his work. I think Batman versus Superman had its issues, fair enough. But I think Zack Snyder did a fantastic job with that movie, nonetheless. And I think he did a fantastic job with the Justice League director's cut, the Zack Snyder cut. I think that was a great 4-hour movie. But unfortunately, bad news for us fans of Zack Snyder because apparently the first film in Netflix two-part sci-fi saga features Sofia Boutella, Charlie Hunnam, and Jimon Hunsu, and it's getting cut down by critics. Reviews of Zack Snyder's Netflix feature Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire have landed, and prospective viewers may find their excitement for the film getting eclipsed by the rough appraisals. Film streaming December 21st tells the story of a mysterious outsider providing hope to the denizens on a distant moon and threats of war. The cast that includes Sofia Boutella, Charlie Hunnam, Jimon Hunsu, and the voice of Anthony Hopkins. The film is the first in a two-part saga with the follow-up titled The Scargiver set to hit the streamer in April. Rebel Moon started its life a decade ago as a pitch for a Star Wars project before getting redeveloped as its own entity, and indeed, a number of the critics reviewing the film make note of the perceived similarities to the George Lucas created franchise. Notably, streaming projects are known for succeeding without needing the sign off of critical acclaim, suggesting a disconnect between reviews and general audience interest, particularly when it comes to subscriber sampling. A quick look at some of the reviews for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. First of all, the Hollywood Reporter chief film critic David Rooney says this is a derivative, crazy quilt endeavor loaded with enough plot to plug up a black hole, but only the most feebly drawn characters to do the work. The harshest evisceration for Rebel Moon, currently holding a 26% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, comes from IndieWire, which gives the movie a D minus grade and dubs it Snyder's worst film. The Guardian gives it 1 out of 5 stars and deems it an ugly, unforgivably dull, oh my God, self-serious mess. Jesus, that is so harsh, so harsh. The Independent opts for the same star rating and calls the movie a mess of imagery, some of it attempting to shock congregated largely around the idea of what might look good in a trailer. So, I mean, if you look at the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, you'll notice that pretty much, more or less, that seems to be the common theme between pretty much all of the Rotten Tomatoes reviews we see by critics, which is very unfortunate because, again, I was very excited for this movie. To be honest with you, I still am kind of excited for this. I'm a big Zack Snyder stan. I'm a big fan of his. I think visually, he gets some of it right, some of it wrong. I think that sometimes he's very on the nose with his visuals, with his themes. Obviously, the whole God figure in Batman versus Superman, and obviously in all his Superman movies. To be honest, I mean that is quite obvious. The slow motion sometimes gets on my nerves, but apart from that, I think Zack Snyder generally his movies are very fun. And one of the things I like about them, I know a lot of critics hate this, but he takes his movies seriously. Very little humor. I could do with a bit of humor in his movies, but he takes his movies seriously. And that's the vibe I get from most of the reviews, from most of the critics. They maybe went into this with the wrong mindset. If you go into a Zack Snyder movie not expecting a very serious, very dark movie, well, I mean, it is a Zack Snyder movie after all. Obviously, I will have my review for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon next week. To be honest with you, I might give a quick stream this weekend because the next podcast is going to be on Thursday 28th. The next podcast is going to be on Thursday 28th, and that's going to be our top 10 movies of the year. That will be probably with our beloved Cassandra joining us like she did last year. But I think I might pop in with a quick podcast on Saturday 23rd. I think I might do that. Just give a quick 45, maybe 45-minute podcast episode then. Maybe Frank or Joe will be free then as well. And we can give you reviews for Maestro, which is coming out this week, and a review also for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. That would be definitely an episode not to miss out. Obviously, make sure, guys, like, subscribe, and obviously follow our socials if you want to keep updated to all that is happening. Make sure to do that, guys. If you're watching this, we've got right now, I had a quick look before, we had 9 viewers, and 9 viewers, what are you doing? Why aren't you liking this video? Like, and comment, please comment in the comment section below. Let me know all your thoughts about all we've talked about so far. Last topic was obviously Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon getting completely eviscerated by the critics. And with that, last news piece of the day, which is another bit of very unfortunate news. And that is the news that Jonathan Majors has been found guilty of assault and harassment. A New York jury found Marvel actor Jonathan Majors guilty of reckless assault in the third degree and guilty of harassment. The verdict was reached by a 6-person jury after roughly over 4 hours of deliberation spread across 3 days. Majors, wearing a grey suit and black dress shirt and tie, stood with his attorneys as the verdict was read, family members and his girlfriend, Megan Good, behind him. Sentencing is set for February 6th. The charges, a misdemeanor and a violation, carry a sentence of up to 1 year in prison. Now, it's important to say that on 2 other charges, which were the more serious charges, he was not found guilty of intentional assault in the third degree and not guilty of aggravated harassment in second degree. So basically, I did some research about this, right? So when it comes to the charges that he was accused of, reckless assault and guilty of harassment, the reckless assault part, if, let's say, someone comes up to you and tries to take your phone, right, and you push him, that can be counted as reckless assault. So this is not kind of like, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm trying to be careful in how I describe this. I'm trying to describe this as carefully as possible. But basically, his assault was not done intentionally, or at least that's what the court believes, right? That the assault that he did was not done intentionally. And he's also not guilty of aggravated harassment. He is, however, guilty of harassment. So, in a statement after the verdict, the actor's attorney, Priya Chaudhry, said Majors looks forward to fully clearing his name, implying he may appeal. She continued, Mr. Majors is grateful to God, his family, his friends, and his fans for their love and support during these harrowing 8 months. Now, obviously, here we talk about movies and series, and what does this mean for the MCU? Well, a few short hours after the verdict was read, Marvel Studios decided to drop the actor as Kang the Conqueror from its upcoming MCU films. So, what's next for Jonathan Majors? Well, first of all, we need to see if he's going to end up in prison, because obviously Jonathan Majors can face up to 1 year in prison. So there's that. With regard to his career, well, I think it's going to take a very, very, very long time for him to reform his career. Very, very, very long time. I think it's going to be tough for him to recover from this. Do I see him recovering? I think he needs 5, 10, maybe 10 years away from the screen. And if he can, I'm a big believer in giving second chances to people. And if there is enough evidence and proof that he's kind of like he's reformed his ways, he's learned the mistakes he made, I'm all in for giving him a second chance. But I mean, I think obviously clearly Marvel did the right job there. Disney did the right job in not in getting rid of Jonathan Majors as Kang. Now, with regard to the industry itself, what does this mean for the MCU? It's an interesting discussion to be had. Guys, in the chat, let me know, what should be the direction now for the MCU? What should be the next direction for Marvel? Do you think the MCU should continue with the storyline of Kang? I mean, because there's 2 directions you can take now, right? Either you completely cut out Kang from the storyline and move on to something else, maybe move on to Doctor Doom, for example. That's a direction they can take. Or else continue with Kang, but recast Kang. Now, I've heard some ideas about recasting Kang. I'm not convinced by any, to be honest. But I think if Kevin Feige were to come up to me and ask me, what is your opinion? My opinion would be just cut out Kang completely from the storyline, use Loki season 2 as the ending for his character. I think they did a good job in offering the opportunity to the MCU in ending the story of Kang and move on to a more interesting, more cohesive storyline with a more interesting villain. With that, guys, I'm going to take a break because my voice is killing me. We've been on for 1 hour. I need a bit of a break. So give me 2 minutes, bit of a break for my voice. And with that, guys, we will move on to the reviews. We've got 3 reviews coming up: The Teacher's Lounge, we've got Priscilla, and we've got Godzilla minus one. 2 minute break, guys, and we'll be back. And we're back. Oh, I needed that break. My voice was killing me. So, Ethan, telling us don't follow Marvel that much doesn't affect me, in my opinion, but I would recast his role. The issue I have with recasting his role is basically that the whole MCU storyline with kind of like Kang and all his different variants is that there's just no cohesive storytelling there. There literally is no cohesive storytelling. Like, does anyone who is a fan of Marvel, anyone honestly care about Kang? Honestly care about where the storyline is going? Not really. Not anyone that I know, at least. Not anyone that I've read on Twitter. And trust me, I see a lot of opinions on Twitter about the MCU, and then mostly they've been negative. So I mean, if if Kevin Feige has a very clear pl- like storyline he wants to follow and he trusts that storyline and thinks that's the best direction, go for it. But if you honestly had to ask me, what would you do if Kevin Feige were to come up to me? Hello, Andrea. You have the Adler podcast. You always have the right opinions and always have the right like thoughts about what should studios do. So, what would you do in my position? I would honestly tell Kevin Feige just scrap the whole thing and use, like I said, Loki season 2 as a way to kind of end the whole thing and just move on, dude. Move on to brighter futures. Scrap the whole Kang Kingdom shit and just move on to Doctor Doom. Move on to maybe use Hulk as a villain. I mean, we need an interesting Hulk in the MCU. Hulk, Professor Hulk, just has not worked at all. Like, give me the ferocious, powerful, scary Hulk. Turn him into a villain. Go for it. You have that storyline there. There are lots of comics which approach Hulk that way. Where I think it's World War Hulk. I think it's called World War Hulk. Yeah, World War Hulk. That's the one. I remember looking at some comics on World War Hulk. Go for World War Hulk. Give us that plot line. Start developing it from now. Just scrap the whole Kang thing. I think that's would be my opinion. Obviously, now people might agree or disagree with me. Obviously, this is a matter of opinion. All right, and with that, let's move on, guys. 8 viewers in the chat. Hello to everyone. I hope you've been enjoying. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast so far. Today it's a bit lonely, all by myself. No Franco and Joe to play off, obviously, as I usually have. However, people in the chat, let me know in the comment section below. Are you enjoying the podcast so far? I hope you are. And with that, we're going to move on to the reviews. We've got 3 reviews today. We've got the Teacher's Lounge, we've got Priscilla, and we've got Godzilla Minus One. Starting off with the Teacher's Lounge, this is definitely one for the teachers in the chat. Jokes aside, obviously, Teacher's Lounge is set in a school, and it does a I think it does a really good job. As someone who's been teaching for 9 years now, this is like my ninth year teaching. I think one good thing about this movie is just how well they portray life in a school and how well they portray all the pressures that a teacher faces at school. But let's start with a quick introduction to the story. First of all, obviously, this is a German movie, and in German it's Das Lehrerzimmer, which is a German drama film directed by Ilker Katak, who co-wrote it with Johannes Dunker. It was nominated to compete for the Panorama Audience Award at the 73rd Berlin International Film Festival, where it had its world premiere. Now, apparently, the National Board of Review named the film one of the top 5 international films of 2023, and it was also selected as the German entry for the Best International Feature Film at the 96th Academy Awards, following, obviously, last year's big winner, All Quiet on the Western Front, also one of my favorite movies of 2022. Now, what is the Teacher's Lounge all about? So, in the Teacher's Lounge, we see Carla Novak, who is a very idealistic teacher trying to solve a series of thefts at her school. Now, as we can see also in the plot summary by IMDb, that's the whole point, right? The whole theme here is we have this teacher who is caught between her ideals, her very progressive ideals, and the school system and the consequences of her actions, which threaten to break her. Now, I'm sure this movie honestly should be shown to every MTL student out there. Honestly, if you are studying to become a teacher, I really do believe the university should show you this movie. Yes, sir, keep it going. Thank you. So I really do believe that this is the kind of movie, if you are at university, if you want to show possible I mean, yes, it's taken to some extremes here and there, but I think that's all obviously for dramatic effect. But overall, if you want to create a discussion amongst MTL students, show them this movie. I think this movie does a really good job in offering different approaches to teaching, the more kind of like idealistic approach that we see by our protagonist Carla, and then we've also got the more realistic, more down-to-earth, more grounded approaches by some of the other teachers. But with that, let's move on to our actual review. And here we're going to talk about, one second, because I've got a bit of a problem on my screen. There we go. So let's get into the actual review. So my thoughts about the Teacher's Lounge. First of all, I have to say, and even going through this trailer, I mean, we can just have a quick look at this 30-second trailer. This is a very powerful movie. This is a very powerful movie. And as an educator myself, I honestly felt a range of emotions throughout this whole film. And these emotions were a mixture of anger, tension at times, sometimes the feelings of fear. There are moments in this film when as I was watching, and I was like, shit, man, what would I do in her position? Because like I can tell what she's trying to do, right? I can tell her approach. She's trying to be super progressive and trying to be very student oriented. But there are moments in this where I was like really scared. I was like, shit, if I take this approach, man, you can get into some very serious problems. Also, moments of frustration. There were moments where I was like, man, she's taking these progressive ideas way too far, way too far. And some of her decision making is very frustrating as well. Also frustrating from the point of view of an educator in the way that some of the parents approach her, some of the students approach her, some of the other staff, some of the other teachers approach her. So this movie brought out a bunch of emotions out of me, and props to the movie for doing that. The movie itself has some very strong thriller elements in it, and I think all these elements, whether it's the soundtrack, whether it's the cinematography, all of these elements, do a really good job in elevating the tension in this movie. I think we can stop sharing and focus on the review. So whether it's the soundtrack, like I said, the soundtrack has these very like violin effects, very horror-like. Whether it's the camera work, the cinematography, lots of close-ups to, as you can tell, to our protagonist Carla's face, bringing out all the strong emotions she is feeling. That again is very effective in developing that tension throughout this movie. Now, obviously, we have to talk about the performances. Very strong performances throughout this movie. First of all, we have to mention the performance by Leonie Benesch. Very, very effective in portraying the different types of emotions she feels through this movie, portraying the pressures of a teacher that she faces, whether it's from the parents, whether it's from the rest of the staff, whether it's from the students themselves. And she has moments here and there, very powerful moments here and there, whether it's in the toilet having a panic attack, and other moments that I really don't want to spoil. Because I hope that viewers and listeners right now, how many are we? Right now we're 9 viewers. Great guys, 9 viewers. Go and watch this movie. This is a very, very good movie, very strong, powerful movie. And it's thanks to, partly obviously, to the performance by Leonie Benesch that this is a very strong movie. Now, like I mentioned at the start, this is the kind of movie that will give audiences lots to discuss. So I highly recommend watching this movie if you can with other people who are interested in education in schools, the approach you should take with your students, because there are lots of questions that come out of this movie. Whether it's, is this movie in this movie, is the teacher too idealistic? Listen, watching this movie definitely will not encourage too many people to become teachers, because the kind of pressure this movie shows, it's almost horror like at times. But I think it does a very, very good job, very effectively showcases kind of like how even the most idealistic and well-trained teachers, and to be honest, she's not teaching in some, like ghetto school. You can tell this is a well-funded, beautiful looking school, very modern school. So even in this context, even in this setting, this idealistic, well-trained teacher ends up getting bogged down from all the different pressures, again, whether it's from the students, whether it's from the parents, whether it's from the SMT, whether it's from all these different sides, all these different elements of teaching. And I think the movie does a very good job in portraying all of this. Any negatives? Well, to be honest with you, I think the movie was going for a particular ending, which it's iconic, but I don't think it's as powerful as the movie thinks it is. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it. When you watch it, let me know, obviously, in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about the ending. But I don't think, personally, it's as powerful as it really thinks it is. If I had to mention one other thing, I think overall, I think as a movie, this I think that's pretty much it with regard to negatives. Actually, I was thinking of one other thing, but actually, to be honest with you, I think overall pacing wise, I think the movie does a good job with regard to the pacing. I think overall, it's not a very long movie. How long was it? I think it was 1 hour 30 minutes. So yeah, 1 hour 38 minutes. So overall, I think the director does a very good job here with regard to the pacing, with regard to telling the story that they need to tell. Um, Oh, the one last thing I wanted to mention. You know how you watch a movie, right? And the movie starts off with this. So let me just bring up the share screen again, just in case anyone is joining us again. 1 second. Just bring up the screen. So right now, obviously, we are talking about the teacher's lounge. So whenever you watch a movie and at the start of the movie, something small happens, some small incident happens, and that incident continues to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And this is that movie, right? It's a small incident at the start, but that incident just piles on and on and on onto our protagonist. And yeah, I think the movie does a very good job with tackling the various themes it has in it, whether it's focused on like the approach to education, whether it's focusing on race, whether it's focusing on class, so many different elements, so many different themes which were approached in this movie. And I think, honestly, the director whose name is Ilker Katak, I think Ilker Katak does a very, very good job in portraying all of this. So, looking for a good movie, good drama, good thriller movie, make sure to check out The Teacher's Lounge. My rating. I don't want to forget my rating. My rating for The Teacher's Lounge, I would say, is a solid, very, very solid 3.5 out of 5. Highly rated. Go and watch it. And with that, let's move on to movie number two. And movie number two is Priscilla. Priscilla, which is another movie I checked out this weekend, is an American biographical drama film written, directed, and produced by Sofia Coppola based on the 1985 memoir Elvis and Me by Priscilla Presley, who also serves as an executive producer, and Sandra Harmon. It follows the life of Priscilla, played by Kaylee Sweeney, and her complicated romantic relationship with Elvis Presley, Jacob Elordi. And let's obviously, as I always do, get into the pros. What did I like about this movie? I liked quite a bit about this movie, actually. First of all, I have to mention the beautiful visuals. I think this movie does a great job in being portrayed like visually. It's just stunning, stunning, stunning stuff. I think this is the making of. Yeah, this is the making of. But I think they do a really good job. Obviously, especially Sofia Coppola, we know she's a fantastic director. She does a great job. Every scene in this movie is stunningly portrayed. The cinematography in this is out of this world. Like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. If you want a masterclass in perfect composition, this is it. Like, watch this movie. Look at how Sofia Coppola places her actors and actresses. Look at how she places Jacob Elordi across from Kaylee Sweeney. How she showcases how intimidating a character like Elvis can be to a bloody 14-year-old. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. But the composition in this movie is just stunning. Just out of this world. Like, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And not only that, but then obviously, visually, this is, again, like I've said, great stuff. Like, honestly, I wrote it down as one of the comments whilst I was watching this movie. I could take 10 scenes out of this movie and place them as a wallpaper on my PC monitor, because some of the shots here are bloody insane. And to help with that, we've got the very, very, very good production design. Very, very, very good production design. Trust me, this movie has very, very, very good production design. Moving on from the beautiful visuals, we also have to talk about the lighting in this movie was so good, so good. I, honestly, I have to emphasize how good the lighting was in this movie. Like, stunning lighting throughout. Moving on, obviously, we have to talk about the performances here, right? Katie Spini, who I think does a very, very, very good job. She is honestly a standout in this movie, as we see Priscilla develop in her emotional maturity throughout the whole film. She goes from this shy, timid 14-year-old and obviously continues to develop to this more mature and confident woman at the end of the film. Spini portrays this superbly. Obviously, what is portrayed here, we see a very, very, very different side of Elvis from the one that we saw in Baz Luhrmann's. Whether it's the portrayal of Elvis himself, this is a very, very, very different take from a movie with tackling such a big personality like Elvis. With regard to the performance by Jacob Elordi, obviously he's the hottest name in town right now. I honestly believe that Jacob Elordi has completely mastered the role and given us a look at the Elvis we never saw in the public eye. Interesting to see how spiritual he was. Interesting to see how quick to anger he was and how controlling he was about all the different elements of Priscilla's life, whether it's what she wants to, what she has to wear, when she comes to visit him, and when she's not allowed to visit him. So I think overall, the movie, Sofia Coppola in her movie does a great job in portraying this different side of Elvis that we definitely did not see in Baz Luhrmann. Another thing we definitely did not see in Baz Luhrmann's Elvis was the pacing. So the pacing in Elvis was literally crack cocaine, non-stop, breakneck speed throughout the whole movie. But here in Priscilla, the pacing is very slow. Honestly, I kind of get the pacing and I get the whole point because this is all from the point of view of Priscilla, right? Elvis is a secondary character. Priscilla is the main protagonist here. And I get the pacing. I get the pacing here. I understand the thought process behind it, but I have to admit that at times there were moments where it was a bit too slow, just a tad bit too slow for me at times, losing my interest just a little bit, just a little bit. Moving on to the cons. First of all, I have to mention number one, how disjointed this movie feels at times. Now, who do we blame that on? I mean, we have to mention the editing, right? Some of the editing here, I think, was pretty weak. Honestly, it does feel disjointed at times. Now, honestly, I think that there were some issues with joining, because here's the thing, right? I mean, the movie feels like a bunch of separate scenes taken at different parts of Priscilla's life. But the movie, I think, where it fails, and don't get me wrong, this is a very good movie. This is a very, very, very good movie. But where I feel this movie does fail is in creating one continuous story from one big event in Priscilla's life to the next. It struggles a little bit in that continuation. Now, to help with that, we have the very, very good performance by Katie Spini. So, despite the editing not always being the best, I think Katie Spini does such an exceptional job at showing Priscilla in different parts of her life that this issue with the editing is somewhat kind of recovered. Let's put it that way. So that's one of my issues with this movie. Also, I have to say that for such a big protagonist, for such a big personality, and we've got a movie about Elvis here, right? So for such a big personality, for such a big movie about Priscilla, the movie does kind of meander at times and just doesn't feel as thrilling a watch as I feel like it should have been. I mean, this is such an important subject matter. And I mean, Elvis was overall, I think, not an amazing movie. It was a decent enough watch. But I think the one good thing that there was about Elvis was show you how important this personality was. And I think one of the things that Priscilla fails to do, and again, this could be all the intention of Sofia Coppola. Don't get me wrong. This is probably was in Sofia Coppola's mind. But one of the things that disappointed me a little bit was how unimportant the movie feels and how it just doesn't feel very memorable, right? For such a very well shot, very beautifully shot movie, great performances, I feel like if I weren't going to review this movie by now, I watched it on Saturday, I would have forgotten about this, which is a bit of a problem, right? When it comes to any movie, but especially a movie about a big personality like Priscilla. The ending, I think the ending itself, um, again, this is another thing. I just said it before. This is probably again Sofia Coppola's intentions, right? I just disagree with her intentions. The ending, just like pretty much the whole movie, just feels unimportant. Like I was expecting this big climactic scene between Priscilla and Elvis. And yes, I think Sofia Coppola, again, this was part of the thought process behind this movie. But the fact that we don't get this climactic moment from Priscilla, and knowing that there's a great actress performing as Priscilla, Kaylee Spini, was for me, honestly, a bit of a disappointment. Now, again, you would be right if you said this in chat, but I mean, that is the whole point of the movie. Yes, it's the whole point of the movie. I just disagree with it. So yeah, that was one of the disappointing element I had with this movie. But again, although I had a lot of problems with this movie, don't get me wrong, I had a very good time watching it. I think it's a beautifully made movie, great performances, and an overall well-made movie. And it was great to see both Jacob Elordi and Kaylee Spini in these roles. I hope to see Jacob Elordi and Kaylee Spini in more roles in the future. My rating for this will also be a 3.5 out of 5, I think, for just how beautiful visually this movie was done. I think it gets that rating on that alone, but the performances obviously help as well. This honestly could have been a 5 out of 5. Just a bit more care given to the editing, and maybe just one more or two more scenes between Elvis and Priscilla to give us that satisfying climactic moment at the end of the movie. Those were some elements which were missing. So that is Priscilla, and that is my review for Priscilla. Guys, give me 1 minute break. I need 1 minute break to take a sip of water and rest my voice for a little bit, because coming up next is the big one. Literally, Godzilla minus one is coming up next, guys. And I know that a lot of viewers and listeners are here for that review. So just give me 1 minute break. And after that, we'll get into the Godzilla minus one review coming up in just a second. All right, guys, let's move on to the final review of the day. And that is Godzilla minus one. I've been so excited to talk about this movie. I wish Franco was here to discuss this movie with me. We had a really good time watching it yesterday. This is definitely one you should watch at the cinema. Honestly, if there is one movie you should check out at the cinema, it's this one, Godzilla minus one. So, with that, let's get into the review. So, what is Godzilla minus one all about? By the way, guys, anyone who hasn't watched Godzilla minus one, obviously there will be no spoilers, as you know. We never give spoilers on this podcast, and if we do, we warn you from beforehand. And let's get into it, guys. So, Godzilla minus one, which is a Japanese epic kaiju film directed, written, and with visual effects by Takashi Yamazaki, produced by Toho Studios and Robot Communications. This is, man, I was stunned when I read this. Toho's 33rd Godzilla film. What the fuck? That's incredible. Now, in the film itself, we see post war Japan dealing with the emergence of Godzilla. Clearly, this movie takes very, very obvious inspiration and influence from the original 1954 Godzilla film, a film that I definitely need to rewatch, by the way. It's definitely one on my rewatch list. Now, the story itself starts off in 1945, near the end of World War II, and there we meet our protagonist, kamikaze pilot Koichi Shikishima. Oh, sorry about butchering that surname. Shikishima, who is feigning technical issues with his plane. Clearly, he doesn't want to, obviously, commit suicide, to do his kamikaze. And to avoid doing that, obviously, he lands on Odo Island, and this is where there are lots of mechanics who can repair his plane. Obviously, his plane had nothing wrong; he was just pretending. Um, and as he is staying on Odo Island, himself, Shikishima, and the other mechanics are attacked on Odo Island by Godzilla. Now, what wakes up Godzilla? We never actually learn in this movie. There are some hints that it could have been the nuclear bombs which woke up Godzilla, but that is never confirmed in the movie itself. Now, after the attack, Shikishima survives the attack by Godzilla and he returns to Tokyo. However, we see him plagued by survivor's guilt. However, we do see him, and we do see not only him and the rest of Tokyo trying to rebuild life post, obviously, World War II, post all the bombings by the American bombers. However, that is where Godzilla once more comes into play, interrupting Shikishima and Tokyo's recovery from World War II. Godzilla returns and attacks Tokyo. So that is more or less the plot we see in this movie, and obviously that develops then into its own storyline. So the review, let's get into it, guys. So first of all, what did I think about Godzilla minus one? Listen, the first name I'm going to mention here is one I've mentioned already, Takashi Yamazaki. Takashi Yamazaki, who wrote this, who directed this, and even took care some of the CGI. Because director Takashi Yamazaki was originally a VFX artist. And that is so obvious in this movie. After watching this movie and reading that is the most obvious thing ever. Because this guy knows his visuals so well, man. The visuals in this movie are absolutely insane. Everything about this movie is beautiful. That's one word I'm going to use throughout this review. This movie is bloody beautiful. It's so beautiful. Beautiful visuals, beautiful cameras, camera work. Everything about this movie is beautiful. Now, let's get into why it's such a beautiful movie. First of all, the CGI. The CGI here, yes, it is a little wonky, it is a little janky at times, but the character design, everything about Godzilla is so beautiful, so stunning, and the destruction is portrayed so realistically that, trust me, it's worth watching this movie for that alone. Godzilla. We have to talk about Godzilla, right? In a Godzilla movie. Powerful. One mean creature, one mean monster. This is a really mean, evil creature. He's not your friendly Godzilla trying to protect humanity from another monster. No, this is a monster who just wants to smash stuff. Now, why does Godzilla want to smash stuff? The movie never gets into that. And I think it's for the better that it doesn't get into that. We just know Godzilla wants to destroy Tokyo. Who cares why? Anyways, like I said, the creature design for Godzilla makes this new iteration of the monster very distinguishable. And one thing I really noticed about Godzilla, I wonder, I can play the trailer here. One thing I noticed about Godzilla is the eyes. The eyes are so emotive, very emotive eyes here. There we can see that CGI there, or they're stunning CGI. And here, obviously, is the destruction of Tokyo. And oh, this scene was so good. The scene of Godzilla coming out of the destruction of the smoke and all the destruction. Beautiful. Anyways, so Godzilla himself. Some stuff I wanted to mention about Godzilla. First of all, the atomic heat beam. Wow, that is feels so powerful in this movie. Just feels like a nuclear bomb, like an atomic bomb falling down and exploding. Honestly, destroying everything in its way. That's one thing I wanted to mention. Secondly, the movement by Godzilla feels so destructive. And I was surprised by how fast Godzilla is in this movie. Very fast movement, making Godzilla feel very threatening. And like I've said multiple times now, this is one evil monster, mean, just wants to destroy humans and all the different buildings. So great stuff here with regard to the design of Godzilla, with regards to approaching a monster like Godzilla. This is exactly how you do it. The Japanese have really perfected it to an art. One other thing we definitely need to talk about with regard to this movie is the setting itself, which is obviously post World War II Japan. So in this movie, here we've got this period film, right? And we see the creature of Godzilla emerging just as Japan is struggling to recover from the destruction it faced in World War II. And face trying to recover from all that destruction of World War II, then Godzilla comes up, right? Which is obviously also the reason why the title is -1. Godzilla reached zero as it was recovering from World War II, and then it's back to -1 with the attack by Godzilla. Other elements I wanted to talk about with regard to this movie, definitely the budget. I was gobsmacked by the fact that this movie has apparently even less than a $15 million budget, because the visuals, the scale, the epic feeling of this movie is just out of this world. Out of this world. When you think about movies that cost $300 million budget, Indiana Jones, the Indiana Jones that came out this year, 300 million, and Godzilla -1 cost less than $15 million. Blows my mind. Literally blows my mind. But forget all the visuals and the epic scale and the beautiful design and everything. Cut out Godzilla from this movie. Cut out Godzilla from this movie. You've still got very well written human characters who provide the audience with very strong emotional moments throughout the whole movie. Do you know, guys? And I'm shocked saying this. I'm honestly shocked saying this. But did you know that in this movie, you actually care about what's happening to the human characters? Whenever you see the human characters on screen, you're not like, oh, bring me back to Godzilla destroying everything in its way. No, you care for the human characters, which completely blew my mind. The Japanese know how to do it. Now, obviously, with regard to the characters, the setting definitely does help. So there is that. But I mean, props to the writing team on this. And obviously, props to Takashi Yamazaki, who also wrote this movie. So there's that element as well. Now, with regard to the great writing, obviously, apart from obviously the great characters, it's a Godzilla movie. You know, there's going to be a bunch of very strong social and political critique. Obviously, in this case, we can see that it's a clear critique of the Japanese government, the way it treats its soldiers, both in World War II and post World War II, treating soldiers as these replaceable, basically numbers, right? Especially even when people find out that Shikishima was a kamikaze air pilot, they find out that obviously he's still alive. The look they give Shikishima is one of disdain, one of, really? You dishonored our country? And yeah, I think the way Godzilla minus one tackles these themes, whilst not being subtle at all. I mean, it's a Godzilla movie. Godzilla is the literal representation of the atomic bomb, right? So whilst not being subtle at all in its approach, I think there are some very strong themes in this movie. Some final comments about Godzilla minus one. First of all, I have to mention the soundtrack. Oh my god, the soundtrack is so good in this. Um, the soundtrack in this is just out of this world. Really good. I'm not going to spoil some of the song decisions taken in this movie, but trust me, there is one moment in this movie when a particular song is played. If you're a fan of Godzilla, you know what I'm talking about. And I felt like everyone in the cinema just ascended. Like literally, we're like everyone was like, "Oh my god!" It was a beautiful moment to watch in the cinema. And like I said, this is a movie you have to watch in the cinema because this is a movie with great pulse pounding action. And honestly, when I left the cinema, I turned to Franco and I told him, "Listen, I haven't felt about action this way. I haven't felt this emotion. I haven't felt this like, oh my god, whoa, watch out, watch out." And I haven't had those moments in a cinema for a very, very long time since Top Gun Maverick, to be honest. And it was quite ironic. I was watching it in the same cinema as I watched Top Gun Maverick. But the climactic battle at the end with Godzilla destroying Tokyo and then the final battle with Godzilla, the action in those particular scenes, honestly, were out of this world. Out of this world. Great, 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 great action. So, overall, as a movie, I think Godzilla minus one is top notch. Probably will make my top 10. Definitely will make my top 10, possibly my top 5. Now, it does have a couple of small things I was bothered with, which is why, yes, I will spoil my review, which is why I don't think this particular movie, deserves a 5 on 5, as good as it is. First of all, I thought that in the second half of the movie, the pacing is slightly off. In the second half of this movie, right before the final climactic battle. So I thought that although there was some important character development taking place there, and we were spending time with important characters, and the movie was giving us an overview of some important themes in it, right? But I thought that the pacing was just slightly, just a tad off there. And I did feel just a little bit of my attention loosening in that moment, right at after the break, basically, right before the climactic battle. There was that. Then obviously once the battle starts off, I was like, oh my god, this is so good. So it recovers very quickly. Secondly, the final scene of this movie. Whilst I have to be honest, whilst the ending of this movie itself, like the whole battle, is done beautifully, and I think it's one of the best moments I've watched in the cinema this year. I think the final scene, which obviously I won't spoil, no worries, no spoilers here, I thought was very disappointing. Um, I really can't get into why it was disappointing because it would spoil the whole movie. But honestly, hi, Dr. Beans. Right now, I'm talking about Godzilla minus one. Talking about Godzilla minus one. All right. I'm just finishing my review. If you want to check out the whole review, you can just rewind a little bit, just to get an idea on my thoughts. But I'm just going through my couple of negatives with regard to Godzilla minus one here, Mr. Beans. Dr. Beans. Sorry for for calling him Mr. Dr. Beans. So as I was saying, the ending itself, the final scene, really, I know they were going for a very strong emotional moment, and I know there's some mystery behind the whole final scene. I just didn't work for me. Just really did not work for me, and really ended the movie on a bit of a sour note. But overall, I think that Godzilla minus one is a bloody fantastic movie, well shot, great visuals, great CGI, sometimes janky, but overall really well done. Great character, great monster design for Godzilla himself. Great human characters, well written, great emotional moments. There are some very strong emotional moments here, and an overall great time at the cinema. My rating for Godzilla minus one is a 4.5 out of 5. And with that, dear viewers and listeners, thank you, as always, for joining me on the Adler podcast. Thank you for keeping me company. I hope I did keep you company as well. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I know it was a bit different because it's basically just me talking and rambling today, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a like on this video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, the Adler Podcast. As always, trying to take this to higher, greater, and higher directions. And with that, I thank you, as always, my dear viewers and listeners. Let me know in the comment section below what you want me to review for next week. Definitely we'll be talking about Maestro. Definitely we'll be talking about Rebel Moon and lots of other stuff to check out. Also, just a reminder before I end the podcast, um, definitely we will definitely have a stream on the 28th, Thursday 28th, where we'll be talking about our top 10 movies of the year. So that's one definitely not to miss. However, check the socials. I might fit in a quick stream also this weekend, probably on Saturday, where I'll be talking about Maestro and Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. So I'll be talking about those movies as well. I have to end the podcast now, guys, because my voice is dying. I've been talking nonstop for 1 hour and 40 minutes, and that's why I sound a little hoarse. So, as always, guys, thank you so much, viewers and listeners, for joining me on the Atlet podcast. And with that, peace out. Ciao, ciao.